Hello, Internet. Don't mind me. I'm just black and white. I'm trying to figure out why my OBS digital camera is the way it is. But hello, Internet. I'm your host, Tim DK. Welcome to a Silverline Show on Tuesday. I'm returning after moving to a new location, which is still in boxes and all that good stuff.
It's not a box, it's a fort. It's a fort behind you.
Exactly. And joined as always by Jose Fuentes.
Hello, everybody.
Ron Fortier.
Howdy, y'all.
Brent Larson.
Hi.
And David Rios.
Hey, yo.
And tonight we'll be talking about how to think critically about comics. I'm going to try some.
We have to interject real quick, Tim.
Yes.
We have to acknowledge we had a comment on our show last week when we were talking about knowing your value and knowing your worth, right? As a creator. After the show, we had someone comment on our YouTube channel. And what was his name, Ron?
His name is Steve Scott, and he's an anchor living in Belgium. And he appreciated the show. He liked the show a great deal, but was a little disappointed that we didn't get into the economics of what your worth is as a creator. And had hoped we could get a little more into what our pay scales like, et cetera, from various companies, and how do you, again, set a rate for yourself or your process or whatever. And so again, thanking him for watching the show and bringing that, which was a valid, comment. I suggested to him that, we would talk, and maybe at a future show after a couple of weeks, we do a part 2 of this particular topic, focusing on exactly what, Steve was looking for, and get back in talking about the worth of your talent and value in the whole comic book business. There you go.
So yes, possible future show to talk about it.
If you're an artist, you're worth more than a writer, that's for sure.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
So tonight, right?
Tonight we're talking about how to engage critically with comics. So this is putting on some of our teacher student hats a little bit, but we kind of talk about how in the art form, a lot of what you should be doing is reading comics regularly, whether that's to pick up on the art cues, pick up on the writing, and there are certain levels of criticality in the way you can think about forms of art. Things I've said before is, sometimes you approach something with simply, do you like it, do you not like it, and leave it at that. That's, if you ever read Catcher in the Rye, that's that writer, that's his preferred way of engaging with books, is just pick it up, put it down, don't try to think about it too hard. We know he wrote one of the most nuanced analogies in the American canon. But we'll be talking about how you actually use your critical thinking skills when reading a comic. We lost Brent. To pick up on what is making the art about it work, what's making the dialogue or the writing work. How do you actually reverse engineer the elements of narrative, or how do you then turn a page or a splash you really like into a figure sketch to figure out how you want to do your own muscles, things like that. Not a whole lot of prelude to put into that, because critical thinking is something that is kind of you pick up naturally throughout your time in whatever creative form you like. That's the whole point of Hourglass's writing on writing, is you get into the game because you have good taste. And so you've probably gotten into writing comics or drawing comics because you like comics. And you're just noticing that Brent's gone. There's Brent.
Yes, I'm sorry I turned off because we're being so critical.
Yes. Oh gosh, what was I saying?
I think, well, Tim, again, this is such a out there kind of topic because it's always going to fall back subjectively on who the individual is, who the comic book reader is, right? And whether you're just a fan at heart or you're, somebody who works in the profession as an artist or a writer. And, I think having a critical mindset is one of those things which just basically comes from participating in whatever art form we're talking about. So that if you grow up being a reader of comics, and not just comics, but other things as well, other novels and short stories, whatever, and you develop a passion for storytelling, then you're going to take that with you into this, field of this is what I like, this is what I like to read, this is what I believe story to be, what good story to be, what bad story to be. And again, like I said, it's very subjective, but I would hazard to guess that all five of us in growing up read other things besides comics, and over a period of years found some writers which we just hearkened to, we just had an affinity to, and basically said, man, that person can write, that's a super talent. And not only started to become, an avid reader of those particular writers, but did our best to study how they did what they did, how they wrote, and maybe try to incorporate that in their own style of writing. And I can remember like being, 14, 15 years old and reading all kinds of private eye crime thrillers, if you will. And in that respect, tripped over a writer named Ed McBain, who I later quickly learned was the pen name of a writer named Even Hunter. And how I tripped over him was he was writing a series of fictional, a crime series that focused on a fictional police squad in a pseudo New York metropolitan called Isola. And those were called the 87 Precinct Mysteries. And I can remember reading him, and within 2 or 3 chapters of the first one of those books that I read, just blown away by his use of dialogue. I mean, he used very little descriptions, not a whole lot of exposition. But once you met the characters, and he did that in such a few lines, and suddenly out came the dialogue, and each character had this distinct pathos, if you will, and the story just flowed. It just moved. I mean, like a racehorse. So I'm done finishing the book. I mean, I'm 13 years old, and it's like, this thing took me maybe an hour to read. And I just, wow, that is amazing writing. That is a skill. And I became an avid fan of Hunter and all his work, including the 87 Precinct novels, which I have most of. I think he did almost 50 of them during his career before he passed away. Many of them were developed into TV series, movies, etc. But when I sit down to write, he's not far away from me. And those experiences of relishing how he used the English language to tell a story is something that I try to emulate, even in a comic book script, of catching that ability to tell a story that's flawless, that just seems to flow like a river, down to the sea, and just bring the story along. So that, again, this, you take that into, becoming an avid comic book reader, and once again, you're going to discover those artists that you absolutely love, that you think are amazing craftsmen. You get other books, and you look at that art, and you go, you know what? Nowhere near so-and-so and so-and-so. And that works for comic book writers. I can list, on my hand, one hand, the top comic book writers that I absolutely, was a huge fanboy of back in the 60s and early 70s. And I think their work was amazing. Did I try to emulate them like the prose writers? Totally, of course. It's what we all do. And so, again, we ultimately come to that point in our maturity where we are critical, where if we understand the medium and we know its goal and how it should work properly, then it becomes rather easy for us to pick up a comic that doesn't meet those basic criteria of the art, just doesn't convey good storytelling skills, or the writer's plot just falls apart within 2 or 3 pages. So again, I think it's a case of, this isn't something you can teach anybody. It's a case of be aware, assimilate as you read, and you then become this, adult fan, if you will, all right, of just appreciating what you know and using it when you spend your hard-earned money on. Can't buy everything out there, guys. I mean, every week those comic racks are filled. So you do become critical. You do become critical, but it's biased. It's biased on what you like and what you don't like.
Well, I will say that it will take the "you can't buy everything" challenge personally. But
let me tell you, Tim, when I was getting into comics as a little kid, they were 10 cents a piece, okay?
Oh, yeah.
My grandmother would give me $1 and I'd come home with 10 comics, all right? That ain't happening these days.
No. Well, I mean, I do probably get maybe 10 or so a week. My average spend is about $50 a week, so I get about 10. Yeah, but, it is that, like you're saying, it is that idea of, it's this weird idea of, when you are truly and critically engaged into the piece, it's that mix of subjective taste and objective skill, right? Of, we can all say that a certain thing isn't paceful, a certain thing is hard to read, or the dialogue doesn't flow naturally, but does it still match the taste, or is it tonally correct, or does it match the theming of that? Where, Jose and I will have comics that we like, that he likes that I don't like, or I like that he doesn't like, and that's more of just a subjective thing, but then we can agree on this one item does dialogue very well, and maybe it's more in one person's wheelhouse than the other. Or
right, we can agree Tim is wrong.
Yes. Yeah. We're gonna get to the point where where I still read weekly from the big two, and Jose said that he doesn't really as much, but we can probably both agree that Dan Mora is as an artist is just the second coming of something out.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know if I go that far, but yes.
Yeah.
Huh.
Second coming of sliced bread.
The second coming of Bachalago.
Man adjusting the camera with his feet. This is a good trick. All right.
Little do we all know, or does everyone know, Brent is not sitting on a desk. He's sitting with a chair, his feet up, and a laptop being held up by his toes. Not the normal way.
Yes. That's all that jujitsu.
That's right.
Yes. This is how all jujitsu masters type.
Yeah. But I mean, and we can get to like that. There are certain points where you will make your purchases or you'll make your initial investments based off of your taste, and then you'll refine it based off of the objective presence of, oh, this one just feels better than this one. And so now when we're approaching these comics, we're getting to like, how do we define that feeling? How do we saying like this one feels better than this one, but we can like hone it down to say this person handles dialogue better. I'm going to full scary story mode. I'm using my phone to light me. I think it's just the light in this room is absolute dog water, so I'll get a light for next week.
He's getting prepared for our Halloween.
I was just going to say that. Yeah, you're all set for Halloween.
Yes.
Right.
There you go.
We will be doing our game of Vampire the Masquerade Halloween as well, and I'm also running the game of Blood on the Clock Tower in our home group, which is a fun murder mystery game. But I mean, that's kind of certain things where. Well, I like Scotty Young's work, but I've stopped really being engaged with his run on Lobo because I feel like he is treading water on some of the story elements. Like his pacing is not there. There's not there does not feel like there is a clear story being told. And so we get this point of I like Lobo, I like Scotty Young's work, and we have this initial buy-in based off taste. But then when I'm sitting down thinking about it, and I'll take a moment to reflect after reading, and say, I don't know if anything really happened in these 22 pages. I don't know if this was worth the $5. And so that's kind of where
I can remember, I don't know, 10 years ago, or whatever, there was a big buzz about this new writer coming to the big two Marvel DC, and I'm definitely not mentioning names there. But this new writer was getting all kinds of hype, totally all kinds of hype, as being the best new comic writer, since who knows when, right? And just blah 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 blah. So I'm in the comic shop after a couple of weeks of being bombarded with this on social media, and I see one of the comics by this particular writer, and it wasn't a comic that I usually picked up. I was familiar with the series and the characters, but I hadn't read it in years. And so I said, "Oh, well, you know what? I'll pick this up, because again, I'm curious. I want to see how good this writer is." Took it home, sat down that afternoon, cup of coffee and my comics, read a couple, picked up this one, and started to read it. And Tim had pretty much the same experience as you. I mean, I read 2 or 3 pages and didn't have a clue what it was I was reading.
Mm-hmm.
The characters were on the page. I was familiar with the characters, but I went back and read the captions, read the dialogue, and went, this has got to change. This makes no sense at all, right? And then they were like 24 pages. And by the end of the 24 pages, it was like I had this feeling that, all right, I got sold a bill of goods.
Ooh.
Okay? Because whoever this writer is, they pretty much come up with what they consider something new, maybe, a little bit of artsy stuff for the comic world, and that's what they sold to these publishers, this bill of goods. Hey, that person went on to a great career and is still writing. Yeah. But I'm never touching another one of their books, right? Because in my opinion, that emperor has no clothes.
Mm-hmm.
Right? I already spent, $5 for one comic. I'm not going to do it again. But again, it's that we talk about. There's this criteria of, hey, be clear in every single issue of whatever you write. I don't care if it's a series or, one shot. But your reader should know what's going on. And this particular writer was much more interested in word slinging than telling a good story.
Yeah. I will say, kind of on the flip side of this experience we both had, Jed McKay's current run on X-Men. I am now firmly believe that Jed McKay and Chip Zdarsky are probably 2 of the best working writers at Marvel, if not the 2 best working writers at Marvel right now. That makes sense while still allowing for drama and tension. And in each 22 pages, it does the thing that everyone should do with serial television, and that a character goes through some level of emotional change. It doesn't necessarily need to be a permanent change or lasting change, but a person is different at the end of the story than they were at the beginning. I mean, in this issue, we have Juggernaut, Kane Marco, go through his own personal journey, explaining why he's working on a team with Cyclops, why he is now one of the X-Men. And you get this whole journey of why does he have this self-doubt, and how does his relationship with Cyclops fix that? And so every time and I don't know if you do the same thing, Ron or Brent, but after I read something, a book or a comic, I usually try to let it sit for a little bit. So I don't, I'll binge read sometimes, but mostly I'll let things sit for a few minutes at least before going to the next one.
Mm-hmm.
And every time I do that with an issue of Jed McKay's X-Men, there is a lot to chew on at the end of it. And I feel like those 22 pages are feel like 36. He's done.
There you go. Right.
Without, being bloated with insane amounts of dialogue. It's not, there's not, captions and bubbles bloating up the page. The artwork will speak for itself, but there's so much development happening in the artwork that he scripted out that then goes into these moments of dialogue. And so, that flip side. So do you guys have that same experience where after you engage with something you really like or you really don't like, you'll let sit and you kind of, it could be a book, like a novel as well, or a movie, but you have the same experience where like you sit with it and kind of go, well, why did I really like this point, or what felt weird about this?
Yeah, I will. Well, you know what? Why not? I'm not really a huge Chip Zdarsky or Ed McKay fan, and I'm not sure why. And I feel like I've given him several opportunities, but hearing you talk about it, it just kind of reminds me there is a lot of real subjectivity that just goes into the love of art. Because the fact is, those guys are, I mean, they're swinging wide. I mean, they basically are. I mean, how much do they account for Marvel's total output? It's pretty substantial. So they are striking a chord somewhere. And when I look at, and I've mentioned this before, when I buy comics, I'll almost always go for the writing first. And when I'm thumbing through something, it needs to have I need to get a sense that the writer has an ear for good phraseology, dialogue, yes, but also description. What's the narrative device they use? I get really fed up when I look at a comic book that doesn't have a lot of words. Frankly, it just doesn't feel like it's worth my money if I'm going to read it in 2 minutes. It's like bad investment. So, but then I start looking at things like, is there a sense of forward momentum in the story? And that's harder to quantify, but there are times when I will read a comic book and at the end I'll feel almost like I'm more bored than when I started. Yeah. Not necessarily because something was inept. It's almost more just like, I mean, you guys all know it. When you watch a movie or a story and you're like, where is this going? That's when the momentum has stalled out and you're going, whatever the narrative threads were that were propelling me to the end, I have lost them somehow. And that's probably always the writer's fault. And so that's something I just really have to, that I watch for when I'm trying to choose. And I suddenly realize, I don't know if I'm answering your question, Tim. Can you repeat it, please?
I'd say, like when you engage with the piece of medium, do you have that moment of reflection afterwards where you start thinking about, I like this about it, I don't like this about it?
Yes. Okay. I'm kind of giving you a short list of what I like, but I will say this. Like, what's funny is Jason Aaron, I think he's a really solid writer.
Yeah.
I don't think he and I share the same worldview. He wrote a book called Once Upon a Time at the End of the World, I think.
Yeah.
It's, that his conclusions about human nature and things really annoyed me. And it occurred to me, I was chewing on it months later, that requires some real chops in terms of storytelling. I mean, I've written stories that I've forgotten about in that amount of time later. So it's probably not a good reflection on me, but I will say that dude really has an interesting take on life that I find compelling even when I disagree with it. So
yeah.
He's a good example. Tom King, I think, is a top-notch writer, and sometimes his worldview clashes with mine. But I don't mind that if it's making me think. A lot of times, I will come to the other side feeling more confident in my worldview just by having encountered an opposing worldview. It makes me think more about what I believe and how I look at the world. Maybe that's something I actually appreciate in good writing too. It's just its staying power. So yeah, that's a good catch.
Yeah. I mean, was it that I can't remember if it was Seneca or Aurelius who said, like, the point of argumentation is not necessarily to yell at someone or win them over. It's to present two opposite point of views, acknowledge their merit, and then part ways.
Yeah.
And so
that is very intelligent. And it's very hard in today's modern discourse.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, I mean, Ron already kind of talked about this, but like the books that he's engaged with, where you have those moments where you end the story and then you kind of go, "This didn't go anywhere. Why did it feel like it didn't go anywhere?" I recently had a book like that. I don't know if I should say the name because it, kind of a bad review, but I mean, well, wait, it's called Heretical Fishing. But the first 2/3, 4/5 of the book are great. They're very cozy, charming characters, fun world. But then they hit the climax and the denouement like 5 hours too early. And so I had to put it down because it's just we're kind of just I think the writer can write a great scene, they can write a great character, but they can't write a good story. At least what's me like, where it's just kind of like, okay, we did a great Act 1, Act 2 was solid, and then we have lost the track and made Act 3 feel like
forgot how to bring it home.
Yeah. And it feels bad because like I got so far into it, I was so invested into it, but then I put it down with according to my Audible 4 hours left, and then I went back to the Dresden Files because I'm on my read through of those.
The palate cleanser.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'll admit, I mean, a comic book arc is similar to. It's funny. A friend and I are collaborating on an episodic series. We don't know if it'll be animated or not yet, but there is an art to telling a story across several episodes or several issues, and having an arc with a beginning and an end, but also having an arc in each issue where your story is propelling you forward to some kind of catharsis at the end of each episode, not revealing the overall catharsis of the entire arc, but of the episode. You can't just have people doing stuff and it adds up to anything. It takes some skill, and so I mean, and you guys have all read very seasoned comic book writers who don't actually close the deal all the times. A couple come to mind who I thought the series was great, and the final issue was just like they ran out of steam and were like, I just want to call it good. So, so it happens to the best of us.
Yeah. Okay. Well, kind of to put a summary on the writer side of things, it's taking time to kind of chew on the story, thinking about what you like, what you don't like, and then taking also that time to bridge what is the subjective like and don't like, and what is maybe the objective. Oh, this writer actually just did not put any punctuation in their storyline, and that hurts me. So pass it on to the art side of things. When you guys have engaged with a comic and you're now taking from it what you like, what you don't like, what does sort of that experience look like? Do you guys have a similar read through something, go back, flip at some pages, and see why they landed with you, or do you just kind of, the images move over your mind? Do you read through once, set it, forget it if it doesn't resonate?
We're supposed to read comics?
Flip through the picture book.
Okay, there we go.
Yeah.
I tend to not notice that there were words right away. I pick up a comic. I want to pick it up to see what the artwork looks like first. The covers are always going to look beautiful because you always get somebody to draw a really beautiful cover. And then sometimes you open the book and mommy would be so proud to put that on the fridge.
Yeah.
So I do. At first I find a genre I like, and then I find, an art style of the interior pages that I like. And then in regards to critical thinking, I actually kind of like mentally deconstruct the page, because first going to art school, I realized that there are lots of factors going into doing a narrative page. So because we went over that, over 3 years, pounding that into us, as it should, I tend to mentally deconstruct pages when I'm flipping through a book to see how did the narrative follow the proper pathway to keep the eyes moving. is the foreground or the background overpowering the foreground. Like honestly, these are, and you said it earlier that like these are things that we don't necessarily think about, but we think about, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like it's that being critical and not derogatorily, not in a bad way, but being critical about like different stuff and what we like and what we're taking into ourselves. I definitely do that visually. And then once I find something that I feel, I like the artwork, I like the coloring, I like the flow of the narrative. Oh, now what's this about? Then I'll start like looking into the story of it, like look the dialogue, what's it about, what, how the story, flows from panel to panel and into the next page. Am I getting a cliffhanger? So.
Yeah. I mean, interesting question from Tommy. Judge a comic more by its art style than its quality of its writing. And then it gets into the subjective nature of art we're engaged with it. Like Jose probably engages with the comic more for its art than I'll engage it more for its writing. And so, we might have books where Jose puts it up on a pedestal because the art on like interiors are great, and then I might, not be a big fan of the pacing, and vice versa.
Dude, I had 3 books like that literally under my desk. They're the first books I unpacked when we moved. Like the last 2 times we moved, I made sure that I knew where they were and they get out right away. And just, they're lovely. I'll show you guys in a little bit.
I think we do this long enough. I don't think I have a particular, I don't drop on any side of that fence, writing or art, as far as why I like a comic book. Yeah, the art grabs me first. That's always going to be the case. I mean, you're standing in a comic shop, you pick it up off the rack, and you look through it, all right? And the genre, science fiction, horror, superheroes, whatever. But yeah, the art's going to be the invitation saying, okay, you might want to read this. You might want to look at it, all right? Especially if I'm unfamiliar with who the writer is, okay? But I have also seen times where I have bought books based on writers I like from DC, okay? Mm-hmm. And again, without naming names, I can remember buying a couple of Superman books when they brought in this young new artist, and this was many years ago. And I was enjoying the series up until this point. The writer was doing a great job with it. And so they bring in this new writer. Okay. So I get that monthly title, and I sit down with it, and I start reading it, and the art is so different than what I was used to, but in a bad way. Mm-hmm. Not in a good way, in a bad way. Because sadly, and I think, Dave and Jose will get what I'm going at, this young artist couldn't actually make his figures distinguishable from one another. So that I'm like, okay, is this really Clark Kent? I mean, it looks like this other guy he introduced a little while earlier. And is this so-and-so? No, it looks like this other person. And Clark, Superman, I mean, their body physiques, their facial expressions changed throughout the one issue. So I'm like moaning, all right? I mean, I can't enjoy this comic book. It's like, he's Superman. In this page, he looks like Bruce Wayne. Learn how to draw. Learn how to distinguish. Get the figure sheets, okay? Most horrible thing in the world. I mean, to this day, I hear that artist's name and I run the other way, okay? I mean, they gave him a job and he couldn't draw distinguishable primary characters that are their flagship heroes.
No.
Or at least stay consistent. Be consistent across the book that you're working on. It may not look like, this person's art. It may not look like, this other person.
Right. Make the characters look like the characters.
Yeah. If you're going to draw Superman one way, keep it that way across the entire
Exactly.
book.
This guy could not do that. He could not do that. And then, years later, it's like, oh, it's great new artist from DC, blah, blah, blah. I'm going, man, you're looking at different pages than I am. All right,
Yeah.
no thanks.
That's
You related to the editor and got a job. I don't know.
I mean, that's kind of where you get to this where like Jose has also mentioned where like his books where he likes the art but he doesn't like the writing, where even if we're not necessarily in our wheelhouse, like we'll still be able to pick up on what's critically good or bad about the other aspects of them. Maybe not as detailed or as nuanced as a specialist, but a writer can tell when art isn't doing what's doing. And like Ron said, like you'll be able to know it's like, oh, it's because it's not being consistent. But I mean, on the other end of that,
writing should not have me looking more confused than when I started.
yes,
Yeah,
I know that.
right.
A book that like has great,
And this, right, and you know what Jose uses the word consistent. It's not about styling. Okay, I vividly remember when Bill Sienkiewicz showed up on the scene, right, in New Mutants. I mean, I picked up, you know, his first issue, and my mind exploded. And I went, "Whoa, who draws like this? Right? Who the heck draws like this?"
In comic
He
form.
was consistent. You knew who the characters were. You could follow the story, but it was Sienkiewicz's style. It was how he draws, and obviously, you know, I mean, the guy is super talented. But again, it's like be consistent with what you're doing.
that's, I mean, kind of like on a interesting like parallel of this. I feel bad because on the current run of Mortal Thor, you have Cabal, who does like a great job on the interiors, like consistent, dynamic, characters make sense, all that good stuff you want. But they're always packed behind an Alex Ross cover. Like both great artists, but like it's got to feel like, well, it's got to feel great knowing you're working on a book with Alex Ross, but also it's got to feel where
I
it's like,
think we got three people that froze.
oh, did it freeze?
Yeah, all three of you on top froze.
Oh, but I don't know if you saw the part.
Brent was moving.
Yeah.
Brent was moving. So
Okay, but
Ron and I were just voguing.
yes. But no, yeah,
you were like this, Jose.
I'm saying, yeah, it's got to feel like bad because like if you are like a great artist like Cabal on like the inside of these interiors, but then being packed behind Alex Ross, both great artists, very different styles. Like the subjective taste is different, but the execution both like consistency, anatomy, use of shapes, use of dynamics. It's all great, but it's just, you know, it's Alex Ross. The guy has made a photorealistic Superman. Continuing on what Brent said, do you prefer stories that wrap up neatly in one issue or long and complex stories that take months to finish? I think both. I think there's places for both, and it's just a matter of how well do either one.
I like complex stories. I like multiple issue stories. I want a storyline. It doesn't have to go on like Crisis on Infinite Earth. It doesn't have to be a 12-issue maxi series. But you know, give me a little more, because I like, as much as I enjoy artwork, when I realize, okay, this is artwork I like, now I want to read the story. I want a story that's going to carry me and be detailed, but not so much that I'm reading Sandman. But still, I'm going to enjoy it, right? And I love when hit, not Easter eggs, but like all of a sudden you get plot surprises, like plot twists and whatnot that appear here. Like, oh my gosh, like I enjoy the multi-issue storyline, because I think it gives you more room. And I don't know as a writer, but it gives you more room, in my opinion, to be able to tell that crime story and be able to give in all the little nuances, all the little, you know, sneaky peekies here and there that, you know, that just really like go to make a story like that like phenomenal. That's my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, it definitely gives you more room to like throw in twists and like add turns, but also if you're thinking about like what makes a really good multi-issue series, is you're still writing it episodically, so you're still kind of trying to complete, like more like make a complete movement in each issue that will then build into the movement of the next one. Whereas like with writing a single issue, I mean, the joy of like modern printing is you can make a single issue kind of however long you want it to be, but you have that same cool thing that happens where when you force yourself to write short fiction, right? Philip K. Dick's greatest work is a short story. His greatest work. His most recognizable work is a short story called Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep, which became Blade Runner. Despite the fact that he wrote several.
Really?
Yes.
I didn't know that.
Yeah. But he wrote several feature-length stories and things that became A Scanner Darkly, Man in High Castle.
Know that.
The Three Stigmata of Palmer Eldritch. If you haven't read that, read it. Underrated. But it's a thing where you force yourself to write in these tight constraints that you kind of get room. You don't give yourself room to have chaff or half fat in there. So if you are worth your stuff, like if you can think critically about your own work and execute it, you can just make a really tight 22 pages that is, more or less beat for beat perfect because you don't have room to get lost in the fat with it.
Yeah.
I'm always been a proponent of learn to write short stories first, whether it's comics or prose. Learn to master that form, and then stretch your creativity and go beyond. But I think it's how you approach something and what a situation's all about.
Yeah.
The character, my comedy superhero, Mr. Jigsaw. I mean, I can remember, a while back, up until a couple of years ago, Gary Cowan and I had only done short stories that appeared in, anthologies as backup features or whatever. And most of our stories were between 5 and 8 pages long. And we had done maybe 15 of those over a few years. And to the point where it just became a natural thing for the character, for the world he lived in that series. And, people were following it and enjoying it, wherever he would appear, one of these shorts. Until Rob came along and started Redbud Studios, and we started putting them all together and reprinting them, till eventually we came to an issue where we had done all the short stories and reprinted them. And for whatever reason, I thought, okay, well, if this is going to be the first new Mr. Jigsaw story from Redbud Studios, because we've shown everybody what we've done for the last 30 years, maybe it should be, a full issue. So this is a flip side of what we're talking about, because suddenly 24 pages was the long story for this series, all right, for this character and his world. And that became a real challenge for me, because I was so used to writing these 5 to 6 page vignettes with him. But now I would have to bring his readers and his fans along and say, can I keep them caught up, enticed by the story, appreciate it, laugh, enjoy it like they do the vignettes for 24 pages? And can I come up with a plot that just, moves along? And that 24 pages was, to me, like writing a giant graphic novel. And happily, I think we pulled it off. By the time I finished the script and Gary had the artwork done, it was a special issue. And subsequently, I've since written other, single issues, 24-page longs of Mr. Jigsaw. I'm still writing some of his short vignettes. But it's where you're at with a series, and then an editor comes along and says, okay, well, you've been writing, singles. Give me a 3, issue arc. All right. You got to sit back and look at that format, look at what it requires. And like Tim was saying, okay, every issue has to have certain points, has to have certain highs and lows, subplots, where you're, supporting characters, what's going on, what's the main storyline, and how do you work each act so that you can have a decent finale when you get to book number 3 and it all wraps up. So whether you're writing long stories or single issues, it's always a challenge. It's always a challenge, again, to use the basic format of good storytelling, a beginning, a middle, and an end that all work together.
Yeah. And Kelsey had another question here from Tommy. When you hear critical, do you think of being a harsh reviewer who looks for flaws, or an analytical reader who studies the story structure? And with this, I think I believe that professional critics in the modern age have kind of ruined the concept of critical thought for the general audience, where it used to be that like to be a movie reviewer or a book reviewer, like you like had already gone through the editorial process yourself and were in a column or something like that. Like, you were actually like published yourself. Whereas now anyone can complain about what they don't like and put it up on YouTube and call themselves a critic. And I think that general thought process has also ruined the idea of engaging with the media for a lot of people in the general audience, because I believe that critical thought is probably going to be my most elitist take I ever say in my career at all. I believe that critical thought when it comes to media exists for the other creators. I think if you're a general audience member, you simply just need to know if you like it or if you don't like it, and you can leave it at that. You should be allowed to enjoy your life. You should be allowed to enjoy the things you like. You don't need to narrow down like everything you don't like about your favorite run of Batman, whatever. If it's your favorite run of Batman, it's your favorite run of Batman, take it and go. But for other creators, being able to critically dissect something helps us improve our own craft.
I think that the harsh reviewer angle of being critical very much enjoys the internet, and they're also the ones, and I don't necessarily mean this in a bad way, but they're the ones that when you're at a convention, they're the ones that come up and talk to you. Like, so did you know that blah, 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 and they should have done blah, 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 and in the comic book it said blah, 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 but in the show they did blah, blah. And I'm like, dude, I've literally seen 2 episodes. Like, I don't even know what you're talking about. Like I'm glad that you're passionate, but I had one guy come up to me at the show this past weekend, and it was so funny because he was talking to a couple of his friends, and he was just not liking Miles Morales as a character. No. And this guy had a TED Talk version with like 3 to 4 points of why he feels this way and why he's right and why you can't contest it. And I'm like, dude, it's a comic. It's a TV show. Come on. He was passionate.
I forgot who it was because I wish I could attribute this quote, but there's someone who talked about how they're a creator who did a lot of conventions like that, but their response to whenever people didn't like something was, "But did you have fun?"
Right.
Ironically, being a harsh reviewer is fun. I mean, I've actually thought about the fact that, especially in the years following Star Wars Episode 1, I can't remember the movies I saw around then that I thought were really good other than The Matrix, because you just can't get The Matrix. But it's just so fun to bash things, and the internet is like throwing gasoline on that fire. It's just so much fun, more fun to talk about bad stuff than good stuff. So it's almost inevitable. But one thing I was going to say too was, it's funny that Tommy's comment, he said a harsh reviewer or an analytical reader. I actually think the writer has to be analytical so that the reader doesn't have to be analytical.
Yeah.
Reader reads it and enjoys it, and probably, if you're doing your job, can't even really say why. It was exciting. Well, what made it exciting? Well, I don't know. I just felt really good when I read it. That's the thing the writer wants more than anything else. I have moved you, I've excited you, and you didn't see the strings of my marionettes as I was making it all happen. So now the writer needs to understand things like, it's easier to talk from a screenwriting point of view, like 3-act structure. Yeah. Most people don't know what 3-act structure is. They just know when it fails, because suddenly they're like, this movie feels really long, even though I've seen, they saw the Odyssey and it was amazing and it went really fast. And then they'll see a movie that's half the running time, but it feels too long. Probably because the writer and director aren't using the 3-act structure correctly. In other words, they didn't analytically approach their film in a way that was really a good understanding of their craft. It's going to be the same way in comic writing. You have to know what you're doing. And the more you know what you're doing, the more invisible you make it so that people are just they don't have to be analytical. They're just happy with what you come up with. I think that's like the sweet spot.
Absolutely. We kind of heard from everyone, but David, did you have any thoughts on how you engage with, like, do you engage looking at how certain comics or pieces are colored, or even how like certain, like, you know, movie shots may be color corrected, and how do you like internalize that or reflect on that?
I was following along as you guys were talking about different things, and I picked up different things that I kind of wanted to comment. So I'll kind of touch on all that. It's kind of overbroad. I do agree with Jose on the 12 issue storyline and all that stuff. Going into it, I've had some books that I just said I went through the first 12 issue arc, and I don't want to do that. It's too long, just too much. So I like to hit things that are, you know, much smaller. I do like a lot of the, you know, from the story wise, the subplots that get done in an issue or so, but with an, you know, overarching, you know, multi-issue separate arc, you know, what builds on that. So when I look at a book and I'm actually in a book and I'm reading a book, I like to see one that's pretty well, you know, sketched out from a writing standpoint. Where does the story go? How invested, you know, is it gonna, as I follow along, does it come to a point where, you know, maybe almost everything gets cleared up at some point and a whole new direction comes in and all that? Or is it something that's going on? Because the other thing is, you don't want to be in a storyline that's got you sucked in and now you're 120 issues into it and they still haven't resolved that main thing. So from storyline point, it's that. I also have to comment on one of the things that you guys said is a big thing is, you know, look at the cover. The cover is what sells you to give the book a look. And when, like you said, you go in and you have this nice cover, you know, some of the hot people, you know, Art Germ cover, you know, any of those type, and then you open it up and it looked like somebody basically you know, put ink in their mouth and spit on the page, you know. It's just like somebody threw up on the page, and you know, and you're like, it's very hard to get into. And I do know that some of the books, you know, may have a really good writer, and you know, the art will pretty much detract it, and it may be part of the style. Typically, a lot of the you know, some of the, like the James Tinian, you know, those type of you know, a lot of the artists that work with them are they're not super crisp, clean, and you know, and there are a lot of sketch and all that stuff, and that can play into something whether I like the book or I don't like the book. So that will go in for me also. As far as the color, it has to fit. It has to fit what you're trying to convey in the book. You know, is it something that you know, you're dealing with a tale of witches out in the woods? Well, you know, you're not going to have, you know, bright and shiny everything. You know, it's just not going to do that. You got to convey, you know, a lot of darks, you know, torch lit areas, things like that. It has to follow and support it. And you know, if you're, you know, when you hit that breaking point of you've gone through the whole story and the night's over, and then all of a sudden you do the shift to the day, and you do that cut from the whole dark, you know, story that people are finally emerging from the forest, they get to go home, their adventure is done, and here's the bright light. Okay, that's great, that works. But, you know, a lot of it has to go through and play with what's intending and where they are at that point in the story. I also have to say that I've read books with no dialogue. I would give the props. G.I. Joe, A Real American Hero 21, fantastic book. No words. And Image and Skybound have recently launched multiple series of these silent books, and I'm to the point I'm with Brent on this. Is like, okay, well, I can see that they're doing a story and all that, but I just paid $4 or $5 for this book, and I read it, and like you said, in 2 minutes. That's not necessarily a good value. It has, it ticks some things in the box, but not others. And then on the same time, I have read books that it feels like the writer just wanted to hear themselves write things. And you look at a panel, and 3/4 of the panel is all text, and every panel is like that. I'm from a reading standpoint. I'm in a visual. I follow along on all cues and all that stuff. But from a reading standpoint, is I always like to go through and read and understand where I am. My wife's the other way. She can just blow through a novel in like 2 days. She just keeps the pace up. I want to know as I'm going along what the story is, and if I don't get it, then I have to go back and reread it again, and all that. That to me is breaking the flow of the storyline. So, it's one of those things where having the right amount of dialogue with the right amount and telling the right story and all that thing has to go, and that's what sells me on a good book. The visuals, the writing, the pacing, all that stuff, and if it's lacking, then that's that's a kind of a can be a critical failure for me on it. I do go and I take a chance on some books I don't know anything about. One of the books that I found very interesting was Murder Drones from Omni Press. The artwork sucked me in and all that stuff. And I saw the shows on TV and just interesting, fun things. Didn't know anything about it before that. But I also have my favorite writers. When I go through, particularly in novels, I pretty much feel pretty solid that if I see Timothy Zahn's name on something, I'm gonna want to read it.
Yeah.
Because his work on Star Wars, fantastic. He did Terminator novels, fantastic. I read his Conqueror Pride, his Dragonback series. It's pretty much everything that I've read from him has been pretty much phenomenal. So I will go through and say, hey, he's doing something new. I want to check that out. And he also, some of his books he gets like the Thrawn. They made comic adaptations, which he was, involved in that, and so people I know that I've had good experience with, I try to go and continue. Some people that I like Joshua Williamson. It's Snyder, just some great stuff. So I try to follow what things. If I know some things on it, I'm on a good start. I feel good, and I'll check it out. Maybe I'll buy the first issue. If I don't like it, I don't like the content, I just drop and go do something else.
Okay, well, let's spend that Silverline Show on Tuesday. Thank you, David, for giving us your insights at the end there. We'll be back next week with a topic that is in the tab that I don't have open. And my phone is going to be used as my light. So we'll be back next week. In the meantime, though, you should head on over to the Silverline Comics Crowdfunder. And keep an eye on this link because coming soon, we're going to start kickstarting and crowdfunding our trades.
Yep.
So if you've been wanting to get into Silverline Comics and just want a full book to read from start to finish in one sitting, this is another great way to get your comics fix. As well as some exciting news that we have some books coming up that are going to go trade first. So if you're interested in all that, keep an eye on this link. And in the meantime, you can also get some back issues if you want some unique other stuff if you want to help support a small comics publisher. Not only do you get some great books delivered to your door, but you also get good karma for supporting a small business.
Right.
Yeah. Be sure to check out Wednesday, Wham and Silver Sunday on their respective days. And like I said, we'll be back next week. Same silver time, same silver channel. Hopefully, better light.
Take it easy there, Twin Noir.
Silver lighting.
Yes. But until next time.
Make mine.
Make mine.
If I'm going to patches in the
Hi, I'm Chris Olm. I'm the former editor-in-chief of Malibu Comics. Make mine Silverline.